So good morning, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining this third webinar of the series of SocialWatt webinars on energy efficiency schemes to tackle energy poverty. We have 6 great speakers this morning and a very tight agenda, so I will get straight to the agenda. So there will be 2 parts. In the first part, we will have Andriana Stavrakaki from ICCS and coordinator of SocialWatt presenting the lessons learned from the project. Then Daniele Bergesio from Iviso in Italy that will share the experience of one of the partners who actually implemented SocialWatt plans. Then we'll move to Ireland with Claire Vallant from the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, who will share some experience from the energy efficiency obligation scheme and other programs that the Irish authority is doing. After that, we will have a first round of discussion, and then we'll move to the second part with Maria Elisabeth Buckel from Austria Caritas, providing the point of view of an NGO who has been also involved, in SocialWatt. Then we have the pleasure to welcome João Pedro Gouveia, who is the I don't know if it's the chair or the coordinator of EPA, and who will provide the point of view of the local authorities, as EPA is doing a lot of activities with the local authorities. And last but not least, we will get, I think, a very interesting views from Eleni Canelu and the Power project about how to involve citizens, not only in terms of getting them beneficiate or let's say take advantage of the schemes, but also crowdfunding and other opportunities like that. So as you see, that's we have 1 hour and a half to do all that, so that will be quite intense. So I suggest we start right away, and I'm very pleased to give the floor to the SocialWatt coordinator, Andriana. Andriana, the floor is yours. You're muted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Sorry.
yes, no, we can hear you perfect.
Oh, perfect. Good morning from me as well. I'll quickly tell you about SocialWatt. So it's a Horizon 2020 funded project, and the real aim of the project is to enable utilities, energy companies, and energy suppliers to design, implement, and replicate innovative schemes to alleviate energy poverty. So within the framework of the project, we've developed more than 20 schemes for the energy poor in the 7 key countries that we work on. And actually, most importantly, we're also implementing these schemes within the framework of the project. So the slide just gives some examples of the schemes that have been developed across Europe. And Daniele Bergoso from Aviso will talk more about the schemes that have been developed in Italy. So some of the key lessons learned of the project. And one of the key lessons were learned is that the absence basically of a national energy poverty definition does not have to be a barrier, and there are other ways to deal with this issue. So for example, other proxies can be used as vulnerable consumers to target people that are actually in need. And another important lesson learned is about energy poverty indicators. There's no perfect energy poverty indicator that is suitable for all countries and all contexts and targets the energy poor perfectly. The use of multiple indicators is actually good in terms of, so that people that are designing schemes for the energy poor can basically have a better understanding and target better the energy poor. And most importantly, within the framework of the project, we we realized that energy companies and utilities can have a really important role in energy poverty alleviation. And there are two reasons for that. The fact that they do have pre-existing relationships with vulnerable customers, so they have a direct line of communication with them, and also they do hold actual data on energy consumption that are granular, so they have energy consumption data per customer that could be used to identify, for example, households that are energy rationing. And in terms of engaging the energy poor, we've also, one of the key lessons learned is also that there's a real need to raise awareness so that people understand the benefits of energy efficiency measures and are able to take action on that. Two-way communication is more effective because it gives the opportunity to people to actually discuss their problems and their specific circumstances and get more tailored advice in order to best achieve energy savings. From the 20 and so measures that we've developed and implemented within the framework of the project, what's been quite interesting is that many of these rely on collaborations. So it's really important to form strong relationships with partners to build more effective schemes. So for example, social services, collaboration with social services can help better target the energy poor, but also more effectively engage them and overcome issues such as trust issues. Collaboration with retailers and technology providers can help develop schemes that offer interventions at a better price for the customer. And one of the really important lessons learned of the project is that cost continues to be a barrier for implementation of energy efficiency measures, especially for the energy poor. So when designing schemes for the energy poor, it's quite important to offer these at no cost or at low cost. So linked with this lesson learned is the need to build experience in using alternative financing mechanisms and instruments. So for example, using on-bill financing to facilitate the uptake of schemes or establishing revolving funds and so on to be able to fund schemes better, but also to make sure that the schemes developed allow for and facilitate combined funding. So for example, the energy poor can have access to the scheme that has been developed and can combine it to another scheme so that this is at no or low cost. An interesting example of that is in France, where national measures can be combined with energy efficiency obligation schemes to implement interventions. And also linked to this is again that, if it's not possible to offer schemes at no cost to the energy poor, then different types of support can be offered depending on the level of energy poverty vulnerability of the customer. And this last slide, there's a number of policy recommendations from the project, and one of them is that there's a real need to start developing more comprehensive renovation packages. So not relying on single measures, but be able to offer basically deep retrofits to customers, because this is really the way that energy poverty can be alleviated. Another recommendation is that more stability is needed in national legislation to facilitate the design of more efficient and more sustainable schemes. So, for example, under energy efficiency obligation schemes, that sometimes change over time. So more stability is needed and more time given to people designing the schemes to better design them. So another recommendation is that energy poverty needs to be prioritized in national legislation. And if utilities are to have a key role in this, a firm obligation needs to be introduced for them. Finally, it's also important to note that utilities and energy companies are really well placed to engage with and advise government. They are energy experts in the end of the day, and they can really have a key role in that. So, for example, they can, be part of the network of experts that will be required under Article 22 of the proposed energy efficiency directive. So the energy efficiency directive recast. So thank you for your time. You can find our contact details in the slide. And
thanks a lot, Adriana, for this overview. I think that provides also a good starting point for the webinar. And at the same time, I forgot to mention to all participants that if you want to ask questions, please put them in the chat. And at the very end of the webinar, if you want to jump in the discussion, you can also raise your hand, but we keep that for practical reason. We keep that for the end of the webinar. Along the webinar, you can, of course, make comments and ask questions through the chat. From what Adriana presented, we can directly go to Italy and get the experience from Daniele, who was one of the partners who were in direct contact, let's say, with the field to run these schemes. So Daniele, what can you tell us about your experience in Italy?
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me in this webinar. So first of all, I will just give you an introduction of why, what is Eviso, my company, and why we decided to join the SocialWatt framework. So Eviso is a digital company that uses artificial intelligence to create value for recurrent commodity users. We started with the electricity in 2013 and then moved to even other commodities. In 2019, we decided to become the Italian SocialWatt partner to both improve our market knowledge in our region and to support our motto to have a positive impact on the world. Then we can say that as much as in Europe, commodity prices have risen up really strongly in the last year due to the war in Ukraine. And in Italy, we already had some gas, electricity, water bonuses to help households in difficulties, and 50, 60, and 90% tax deduction for retrofitting. But especially after the war outbreak, the first ones are not enough, and the second almost always regard not poor households. So we decided to face this issue in a different bottom-up approach and develop few schemes to tackle energy poverty. As we are a for-profit company, we overlook all the shades of poverty, and so we decided to get support in our approach by social care institutions close to our headquarters and making a partnership. With them, we were able to start a pilot case to increase energy poverty awareness among social services first and population too. So we made videos, articles, social campaigns, basically explaining how to save energy. And then a training video course to train social service staff about energy management. These videos help the social care staff to get a very first knowledge and terminology about energy and wastes and how to detect them in a dwelling or from households worse. Then, together with social services, we made up an infrastructure to collect data from potential energy poor households based on social service experience on finding the most appropriate households. They fill questionnaires with personal and energy data and send them back to Eviso, anonymized. This data was then assessed by energy engineers at Eviso, who then return advice about how to lower consumptions and bills. These advice were then delivered back to the household by social service staff, who were the only ones to know the identity. So we didn't know the identity of the households. For most of the household, it was even possible to replace white appliances in order to make energy consumption more efficient. And these replacements were possible thanks to a charity foundation, which secured two grants for this project, thanks to Eviso itself, who covered the full cost. We covered the full cost of all the appliances. Although this refined structure, we were able to help not so many households during the pilot case for many reasons. For instance, social services and public administration in Italy are quite slow or quite busy to add new habits in their daily activities. Then household trust should be gained and not assumed. and other few things. But anyway, we consider all the replacements and good manner we delivered from our assessments. Changing habits for around 15, more or less 15 households means saving equivalently 4 people family annual energy consumption. Of course, the result can be very different if instead of white appliances replacement, there is some retrofitting, but our proposal was to accomplish the pilot case and in particular increase awareness. We are now at the stage of involving more regional institutions to enable them doing the job we have been doing with our support and trying to involve more charity foundations and companies. This is not as easy as other companies are not interested enough to alleviate energy poverty, unfortunately. In Italy, energy retailers are not obliged by energy efficiency obligation schemes directive, but distributors. Although in our experience, the project did not have the impact we expect in distributors, neither. I think this is due to the fact that they are more into white certificates, which involve more money. Anyway, similarly, central governments seem to be more attracted by a top-down method, while we think that alleviation works better in the way we approach it. So increasing awareness, collaborating with social services, and so on. So that's the framework as we approach it. So thank you.
Thanks, Daniele. I think that's a quite original case also because you are not directly an energy company. You don't have any obligation to do that, so you try to develop new approaches. And as you said, you had to find the right partners and identify opportunities for funding and so on. So I think that's quite interesting and complementary to our next speaker in the case of Ireland, where then we have the point of view of a public authority who can decide the rules and who is to be involved, and especially through an energy efficiency obligation scheme. So Claire Vallant from the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. I'm very pleased to give you the floor now.
Thanks very much. So good morning, everyone. My name is Claire Valente, or Vallant, if you pronounce it with a French accent. I work on Ireland's Energy Efficiency Obligation Scheme, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how this programme supports homes in energy poverty. So firstly, let me just move this on to the next slide. Yeah, so firstly, I'll give some brief context about the organisation I work for, SCAI. Then I'll give a high-level overview of energy poverty under the first EOS obligation period. And then finally, I'll describe some of the changes for energy poverty for the most recent phase of the EOS. So SCI is Ireland's national sustainable energy authority. We play a leading role in driving forward Ireland's transition to a more sustainable, low carbon energy future. Our remit is fairly large and seems to be growing every year, but you can see here a list of some of the main focus areas for us, which includes home energy. So there are a few different ways in which our programs support homes in energy poverty. In particular, we have a fully funded energy upgrades program for qualifying owner-occupiers. This program was previously known as the Warmer Home Scheme, in case you're already familiar with that. And we also have some grant schemes for homes and communities, which have good grant amounts for energy poverty. And then there's also the Energy Efficiency Obligation Scheme, which has sub-targets specifically for energy poverty. And I'm going to focus on that scheme. So for the first obligation period for the Energy Efficiency Obligation Scheme from 2014 to 2020, basically energy poverty, it was there from the start. So I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with energy obligation schemes. They probably are, but basically it places a legally binding obligation on large energy companies to deliver energy efficiency savings. In Ireland, we had about 11 obligated parties in that first period. The overall annual target for the scheme was 700 gigawatt hours of primary energy by the end of the period. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with gigawatt hours, so just for equivalence, that's about 60 kilotons of oil equivalent per year. And then of this, 5% was specific to energy poverty, which equates to about 35 gigawatt hours per year, or around 3 kilotons of oil equivalent. So across this period, the combined energy poverty target was achieved and in fact exceeded by 60 gigawatt hours. So for the residential and energy poverty sub-targets, the scheme was focused on high volumes of single measures. I've listed here the most popular ones. Overall, about 170,000 individual measures were installed in approximately 77,000 homes, and there were an average of about 2 measures installed per home. In general, the obligated parties delivered these measures in partnership with the local authorities, approved housing bodies, and SEI-approved grant schemes. And the reason for this was, I think, to help them ensure that the homes that they were targeting met the eligibility criteria to be defined as in energy poverty. It's quite difficult to gather that sensitive data, which I think some of you have experienced as well. It's something that's quite personal and making sure that someone meets that definition. So it can be quite an effective approach for the obligated parties to partner up with organisations that already have that information. So a new phase of the obligation scheme just began on the 1st of January this year. So it's just started. The energy poverty target is very slightly higher now. The numbers look about the same, but we've changed from primary energy to final energy. We've made some fairly big changes to both the residential and energy poverty targets, moving away from the previous focus on single measures and towards more of a whole house approach. And this better aligns with Ireland's higher level climate targets. So for the energy poverty target, it's now a requirement that homes being upgraded first have a building energy rating or an energy performance certificate of D2 or worse. And following the implementation of the EOS works, they must have a post-works building energy rating of a B2 or better. And so the aim of this change is to target those EOS supports towards those homes that are in deeper levels of energy poverty, and to ensure that those homes are, to the extent that's possible, taken out of energy poverty as a result of the upgrade. So I have included just our team email here if you need to contact me after the event. If you have any questions about EOS or actually any of the energy poverty initiatives in SEI or for Ireland, feel free to get in touch, and I can, if I don't know the answer, I can pass it on and come back to you with the right answer.
Thanks a lot, Claire. I think that was very, very clear and also very interesting to see the changes between the two periods from, let's say, more flexibility, but as you say, the results that obligated parties focused on single measures, and now the objective to go for actions that hopefully will really make households out of energy poverty. But I assume that the big question now is whether obligated parties will manage to deliver this deep renovation. So
Yeah,
we'll see that. We'll see that in the coming months. So before we move to the second part, we'll have a first round of panel discussion, coming back to what you presented, or also to the two main questions for this webinar. So who should be involved and how to scale up. So what I take from what you all three presented is you kind of spoke a bit about the role of energy companies, but maybe you can come back to that and how you see what should be their role in, or what can be, should or can be their role, and where they can be good, let's say, or better than other organization to implement or to support energy efficiency schemes targeted at energy poor households. And maybe what are the other partners that you see as essential? So, for example, Daniele, you mentioned the social care staff. So I don't know who want to start. Maybe Daniele, you start on that, and then I'll go to Claire and Adriana if you want.
Sure. So in our experience, social services know poverty well, and so we decided to teach them how to recognize and address even energy poverty directly. And this is, in my opinion, is a key factor to increase awareness among population much more than a decree in a drawer. I'm thinking about the government, but that's my thought. Together with a strong will by local and regional government, this is a change. And the energy company, every stakeholder has a key role to provide the best advice, reduce consumptions and bills. That's my opinion.
But you also mentioned that some partners were a bit slow or maybe lack of availability because they are also in charge of many missions and unfortunately also more and more people to support. So do you see alternatives to that or ways to help them to face this shortage of time?
Yeah, so
Maybe.
yeah, of course they are so busy they cannot do this work alone. I think that not even companies cannot face this problem entirely and alone. I think that the scheme we developed and even others would work better with a manager organization or an NGO which can apply for funds, collect data, increase energy management awareness, and so on. Not company, nor social services, but all together. I think it could be an idea, and just companies should spend more time to support that assessment. That's is not money, it's time, but we better provide this time to help finding the best advice or the best ideas on how to save energy, or even direct visit to dwellings. Then maybe this can scale up and not only white appliances replacement, but even retrofitting. So you have to contact Tesco's to get the best retrofit and so on. So we are trying to involve regional authorities to do that. Actually, we are trying to involve their ability to contact more organizations, and they have more power. They can lobby even charity foundation a bit more, so to get their help. In my opinion, that's the way to solve it. Actually, to fight energy poverty. Not alone, but all together. Only collaboration can solve it in a bottom-up approach.
Thanks, Daniele, and I see, Claire, that you approve this approach, and maybe you can also share the experience from Ireland because you presented the obligation scheme, but as you said, there are other programs in place. So how do they work together, or how do you manage to get energy companies working with other programs or with other partners?
Yeah, so I think a lot of what I heard there from Danielle is the same as what I would be thinking from the energy obligate, like energy efficiency obligation point of view. I should probably just say, first of all, it's quite different though for that fully funded upgrade scheme for our old warmer home scheme. That's its own kind of machine. SAI goes out and procures, really, really highly skilled contractors, and they do the whole thing. They deal with, with homeowners come in and they apply directly to us. So we've got the list, we've checked all of their documentation, so we know that they're eligible, and that's us, not me, but the Warmer Homes team or the team that deal with those fully funded upgrades. And they set that machine in motion. They have like a whole process where the contractors go out, they survey the home, they identify what's needed to be done, they communicate with the homeowner, make sure they understand what it means, what energy efficiency means, what the works will involve, and they just have a really nice relationship with those homeowners, which is really, really key because they can be quite vulnerable homeowners. And they make that program of works happen for each home. It takes a bit longer sometimes because they are in energy poverty, but that all happens because of SAI. So that's quite different now from my experience in the energy efficiency obligation scheme. So we just have to sit back and hope it happens, but it does. And so it's this idea that identifying the homes that are in energy poverty can be maybe the hardest part of it. So that's why, as I mentioned just in my quick presentation there, that the obligated parties have been partnering with the organisations who already know which homes already meet those definitions of energy poverty. So at that time, before the 1st of January this year, it was a relatively simple task for them, because it simply was anyone who's living in a local authority home or a certain housing body home will meet our criteria. And then for any private homeowners, they need to have certain welfare payments that they're receiving from the government. And maybe they need to have certain ownership arrangements for their home. So all of that will be checked through some of those SEI grant programs. So by the obligated parties working in partnership with them, it means they can tick that box. They know that they're energy poor. That's that part done, but now they need to go off and deliver energy efficiency measures. So I think we had some good examples, and one in particular where one of the obligated parties really developed a really good system where they partnered with any of these organizations, but in particular with the local authorities or the housing bodies. They went in and they provided a really, really good service where they were kind of bridging the gap there that Danielle was talking about, where the housing association knows these guys are energy poor, and the energy company knows how to do energy efficiency. So they go in, survey all of the homes, identify what needs to be done to actually make the most in terms of energy efficiency. They help them with procurement. They help them identify appropriate contractors. They carried out any kind of BERs that needed to be carried out either before or after the works. They checked the works themselves to make sure that it was all done right. So they were bringing kind of more of the technical support, and the housing bodies were bringing the kind of, these are the right people. So between the two of them, I think it was really, really effective. Now that we're making a change to the program, it's, all the changes that we're making are quite significant, but they have been very, very well signposted in advance. And yet I think there is still a good bit of change there in this system that people have in place, because it's no longer a case of simply saying the homeowner has this welfare payment or they're a tenant of a local authority, therefore they're energy poor. They're not. The home needs to now also have a building energy rating of D2 or worse. So that means that you need to carry out the surveys first before you even know if they're going to meet our criteria to count as energy poverty. So there's a little bit of additional work now involved for them to know if they're going to be able to count that towards their targets. But I think they all know how to get there. But it probably will take a little bit of time to get their systems in place so that they can do that. And one of the key things that Ireland can be doing to support that move is just making sure that any of the other supports we have for energy poverty are aligned as much as possible, because that will mean that the local authorities are thinking about exactly the same criteria that the energy companies are thinking about. So I think there is a move towards that, and I think the SEI grant schemes and our fully funded programme are also looking towards, if not exactly the same criteria, very, very closely aligned criteria. So it should make it easier going forwards. But yeah, I think if anyone was going to copy what we're doing, definitely do get in touch with me first.
Thanks. I think what you just mentioned at the end, that aligning the criteria between the various schemes that are in place, that's good, because we see that also in other countries where it's basically a mess for the local energy advisors or other NGOs, others that try to support households in finding the right scheme and to combine them, etc. So making that easier for everyone and possible to combine, because correct me if I'm wrong, but it's possible, right, in Ireland to combine the obligation scheme with the public grants?
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we don't claim them twice. So I think there's different ways you could do it, but I think it makes sense, rather than having the energy companies competing against the government to find those homes. Let's work together and pool the resources, and we still get to the same place, the same amount of money spent, the same number of homes are done, but we're not fighting each other.
Yeah, because that's maybe something you experienced, Daniele, in Italy, that obviously there the white certificate scheme cannot be accumulated with the eco bonus, for example. I don't know, Adriana, if you want to add something on this.
Sure. I mean, I agree with both actually. On the significant role both that social services or social organizations can have. They work with these people. Their role is very important. They have direct access. They know their problems, and again, there's the issue that Daniela raised. It's also convincing these social organizations that actually by dealing with energy poverty, you're dealing with the overall issue of poverty, so it should be within their priorities as well. And also I agree, about the role of public authorities. National authorities do have a key role in this, but also local and regional authorities do as well. And I think it's important to get them involved, and basically the whole idea of having schemes that rely on collaborations, I think, is the most especially schemes that for example, are under the energy efficiency obligation scheme, or these type of schemes that are led, for example, by local authorities, like forming collaborations in order to benefit from the strengths of each partner is really, really important. So utilities, for example, also have a direct access with customers, also have a direct link with them. They also have access to energy data, energy consumption data per household. And in the future, it seems that the role in energy poverty alleviation will grow. So it will, it's likely to be bigger, especially now with the Energy Efficiency Directive recast and Article 7, where it introduces a ring fence. So if this ring fence and the obligation to target energy poverty goes to them as well, then they'll have an even more important role in energy poverty alleviation. So I think all stakeholders are important, and working together when this is possible is also a very efficient way. And there's examples, for example, of structures that, like Daniela was saying, that having a structure also helps in developing better schemes. So there's a really interesting example from Ireland of the one-stop shops that have been formed, which basically, help customers, help people implement measures from start to end. So like throughout the different phases, from design to funding and actually implementing. And these are really enablers for the transition and for dealing with energy poverty, really.
Thanks a lot, Adriana, and thanks also Daniele and Claire. I will come back to you at the end for the open discussion. I think now that's time to move to the second part of the webinar. And you all mentioned the essential role of NGOs and local authorities. So that's exactly what we will learn from in this second part. And let's start with Austria and Maria Elisabeth Brückel from Caritas, who will provide us with the experience from an NGO who was also a part of SocialWatt. So up. So Maria, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you for having me. Good morning. I'll be giving you a little insight on how we tackle energy poverty in Austria and how my organization, Caritas Austria specifically, has approached the issue in the past. Next slide, please. Oh yes, just so you know, I'm getting a little technical support from Jean-Sébastien in this because my screen will not share. Thank you very much. Caritas Austria is the umbrella organization for all the diocesan Caritas branches in Austria. And in total, we are the largest or the second largest NGO in the country after the Austrian Red Cross, which of course gives us a unique opportunity to reach a lot of households. And because of our many counseling centers across the country, we can provide support everywhere across the country, which is of course very important for energy poor households as well. I'm personally responsible for topics regarding energy poverty and sustainability, and have been leading our largest and oldest energy poverty project, which is Verbund Stromhilfefonds, for the Caritas during the last couple of years. And I'm going to give you a little overview about how we approach the issue specifically. Next one, please. Thank you. So the project was set up as a cooperation between the utility Verbund, which produces electricity, and Caritas, and has been supporting energy poor households in Austria since 2009. So it's pretty old by now. And the project was designed together, so it focuses on all different levels of support that are needed to tackle energy poverty for the households. Next one, please. We offer immediate financial aid, energy consultancy sessions, and new household appliances where they're needed. There are, of course, a number of smaller scale projects across Austria who focus on maybe one of these three pillars, but none of them tackle all of them together. And in our experience, it's really the combination of the three that help households the most, because most of them are struggling with their finances, and so they often cannot afford to pay their energy bills, but they also are never very knowledgeable about energy and how to save energy in particular, which is why the energy consultations in the households are so important, because they allow to give information that is really made to measure for the households in particular, and is therefore very easy to then apply and to grasp. And often households are struggling because they have very old household appliances that are running not very efficiently. And so by getting free ones, they can reduce their energy consumption as well. Thank you. Next one. So to participate in Verbund Stromhilfefonds, you really only have to be a person in need and be affected by energy poverty. So the line is rather low. The project is set up so that the primary assessment is done by a social worker in one of our consultation centers across Austria. Then afterwards, as I mentioned, there will be a made-to-measure energy consultation session at the person's home. And after 1 year, we evaluate the situation again by having another consultation session to make sure that the measures are fine-tuned and that the client really has everything they need to succeed. Thank you. Next one. We also in this process collect a lot of data, which allows us the unique insight that we have into the specific situations and needs of the energy poor households in Austria. And this is extremely valuable, especially for advocacy purposes and for monitoring the energy poverty situation in the country. We also produce reports, of course, and this allows us to look back on 13 years of energy poverty specifically to our country. Thank you. The next slide, please. We have also many ways of engaging the public, because it's often a little hard to figure out how to get the right information to the right people. We've had interviews with newspapers and segments on TV. We've had customer engagement in cooperation with the utility, but also social media campaigns and many more different events. It cannot be underestimated, though, how efficient the word of mouth is to spread a message. And so over the last years especially, we've definitely gained in popularity. Next slide, please. What does that look like in numbers? We've been working with a budget of about 260,000 annually. And over the last 13 years, the project was able to support over 6,000 households with over 15,500 people. We've had over 5,000 energy consultations and financed more than 3,000 new household appliances. That also, of course, has environmental impact, which is very important to us, which amounts to about 8,200 megawatt hours of energy that could be saved, and 1,200 tons of CO2, which were not released into the atmosphere, which is also a very nice thing. And now finally, we've had some specific success in the last year and going forward. Considering the escalating energy prices of the last year especially, Caritas has been advocating strongly for a lot more support for energy poor households, using Verbund Stromhilfefonds as a best practice example for a successful scheme to alleviate energy poverty across the country. And this effort has been very successful, as we have secured 15 million in government funding for energy counseling and new household appliances for the next 3 years. In addition to that, there will be another fund which will directly support the households who cannot pay their energy bills, the so-called Energieschirm. So in combination, these two projects basically fulfill the work of the three pillars of the Verbund Stromhilfefonds, just on a much larger scale, which we are very excited for, as you can imagine. And the regional Caritas organizations are now able to increase the support they offer to their clients using the already existing network that they have in their counseling centers. So we're basically upscaling by a lot, which of course is amazing, especially considering the situation is rather dire regarding the energy prices right now. So yes, I hope I could give you a little bit of an insight on how we alleviate energy poverty in Austria. And thank you for having me again.
Thanks a lot, Maya. I think that's a very interesting case, and also quite positive to see how the scheme you developed from some years already can be used now that the situation is, let's say, even more severe as regards energy poverty. And you definitely touched the topic of today of scaling up. So we'll come back to that in a few minutes. But before that, we'll move to the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub with João Pedro.
Thank you, John.
I will also share your slides. In the meantime, feel free to introduce yourself.
Okay, good morning. Thank you for the invitation and for discussing this interesting and relevant topic here today. And on my presentation, I'll unfold a bit what we have been doing in the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub with local governments and what tools we are also have been developing for enabling this work. So next slide, John. Maybe you can put on presentation view, full screen. So the Energy Poverty Advisory Hub, it's a group of organizations across Europe, a core team of 5 entities, from universities to us here at Nova University of Lisbon, NGOs and other entities, and also a network of antennas, as we call them, across Europe for supporting our activities. And today I'll focus more on task 1 and task 2 of our work. So it's the provision of technical assistance to local governments and also creating tools to supporting local governments for energy poverty mitigation. Next slide. Okay, so a key component of our work, it's really bringing together different stakeholders and different agents working on energy poverty mitigation, but also providing these efforts and tools similar, I would say, similar to specific European projects as SocialWatt and our others that we will see here today as PowerPool, for example. But our work is, I would say, more broad. And we have done throughout 2021 and 2022 a work of identifying projects to unfold on what we call the EPA Atlas. So we have over 250 energy poverty mitigation projects at a global scale, so not only at European level, that we synthesized on this report on the left, Tackling Energy Poverty Through Local Actions, where we identified 24 inspirational cases. So we didn't call them best cases because they could be best in a specific situation. It's inspiration for others to apply, as we also have seen on the previous presentations. And also, a key component of our work is on the capacity building. So we have developed already an introduction course on energy poverty, 1-hour course, and we are currently developing a 15-hour course that will be soon available in the next few months, and also an extended version of the course with 25 hours. Next slide, please. So looking specifically to the report, and I just highlight what exactly is there. This is one example. This one is from Belgium, Danport Renovates. So it's focused on the theme of today, household energy efficiency and refurbishment. But we have this type of visualization and knowledge on each of the projects we selected from the Atlas on this report. Next slide. So on the Atlas, as I said, we have over 250. If you know a new project or if your project is not there, you can submit to our email, or we have a template for that, and it's growing. So it's growing each month with new projects coming from different geographies. And you can search your project by the type of project itself. If it's on diagnosis, if it's a specific intervention on energy efficiency, if it's a renewable energy cooperative or a mapping exercise, and then selecting the project either through the map or through the list or through the filter. You can have more details and the connection even to the website of that project. On the right, you can see two examples: the Empower project and the Culturize, just to set what we have it on there. So we identify the type of stakeholders, what resources were needed, if we could find that information, and this information was either collected by us at EPA team or even supported by the experts and the project partners on each of the activities. Next slide. So all of these are kind of tools for understanding what can be inspirational cases for replication in other locations, and also because our key work is connected with local authorities, as John had mentioned. So we have supported the Covenant of Mayors in their pillar, in the European pillar, to identify and to structure a guideline for local governments to report their the third pillar of the Covenant of Mayors. So not only the mitigation part and adaptation, but also the part of energy access at the European level is on energy poverty. So we have been working with them, also with Joint Research Center, to develop this framework of cities and local governments to report their developments on and objectives on energy poverty mitigation, which you can find on this report from May last year. Next slide. Another really important part, because on research and even coming from a university, a lot of research is being conducted at the universities and the research centers levels that are not usually used by local authorities and other type of entities as NGOs or so on, because they are kind of far. So we, under this report, we kind of reviewed and assessed over 40 scientific publications across Europe that looked into local scale assessments, mapping, diagnosis, indicators that can be useful, and we drawn some conclusions to local authorities. How can they use and what type of data sets or unexplored data sources or indicators could be used for local scale policy making. Next slide. Also, because we have this idea of supporting local authorities, we have started developing an handbook trilogy for really supporting energy poverty mitigation. You can find already online our introductory one, where we kind of set our framework of diagnosis, planning, and implementation. Real soon, maybe in the next 2 weeks or so, we'll be publishing the diagnosis one with key steps for local authorities and, in fact, other entities to develop a process of diagnosis of energy poverty in a specific region, a city, or even a country. It might apply as well. Next slide. And then one of the, I would say, novelties and a key piece of our work is this part of the technical assistance. So supporting local governments with tailor-made solutions, where we have this methodology of providing, so local authorities ask for help. So we had a call for submissions for technical assistance in the beginning of 2022. We'll have a second call in 1-2 months also. That local governments formulate and identify what they need for energy poverty mitigation. Either it's just starting, knowing a bit more on their location, or developing some regulation or financing scheme. And then we connect both parts of experts on EPA team to a specific organization in that country of the local government to support exactly them during 6 to 9 months on a specific activity. Next slide. So, and for that, what do we have? We have been supporting, and this is ongoing, this first technical assistance is ongoing. We have 35 municipalities under our first call for technical assistance, with 11 countries represented, and we are working in different realms. So we are on mapping, we are on experts developing interviews or surveys, or supporting the development of renewable energy communities for the energy poor. So we have a variety of projects ongoing. So I cannot give you today the results already, but it's something, of course, we'll publish soon when we have them. But on the next slide, you can see 2 examples, if you can change it, John. Two examples I bring from Portugal, in fact. So one, we are developing a renewable energy community within the city of Lisbon. So with a specific smaller local authority, so a civil parish. And then on the right, we have in the south of Portugal, a diagnosis exercise with mapping, selecting of indicators, and also interviews in the historical city center to the citizens to better understand the lived experience and connect also with available indicators and the mapping work. So that's it from my side with these two examples, but we have been supporting also one-stop shops in several locations. So I would say we are supporting the key relevant teams. A lot of projects are doing, but we are trying to standardize and giving really the direct support to local governments. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, João, and also I will put shortly in the chat the next to the upcoming lunch talk of EPA that is next week on Tuesday. So where you can also join the discussion with the EPA partners and other stakeholders involved in all these initiatives. And last but not least, we go to the last presentation of today, and coming back to another European project, PowerPool, that develops quite interesting approaches also that will be complementary to what we have seen earlier, and maybe moving a bit further to the point of view of the citizen. So Eleni, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just gonna share my screen quickly. Indeed, the PowerPool approach brings forward the citizen and aims to bring forward the local hero. So how we are doing this? It's going to be quick. I don't want to scare anyone, but we are 14 participating partners from 11 countries, and we have 8 pilot countries. In these pilot countries, we are rolling out this approach with bringing forward the local hero. And the countries are Greece, Bulgaria, Croatia, Hungary, Estonia, Latvia, and Portugal and Spain. So what we are doing is in each pilot country, the energy poor households are identified, leveraging the knowledge of the national partners and a dedicated tool that we have developed, the Power Target tool. We have trained and certified a network of energy supporters and mentors these are the local heroes that are doing the home visits, and they're using the tools to, on the one hand, provide tips and tricks and low cost energy efficient interventions and behavioral changes to energy poor households that can immediately help them to either lower their energy bills or increase their energy efficiency, or both. And through the Power Fund tool, our final tool, we are steering people towards leveraging joint energy initiatives and innovative financing schemes to either become part of an energy community or cooperative, or to leverage innovative financing schemes to find the available funds. And for this whole solution, we have established the local energy poverty alleviation offices, which are run by the trained and certified energy mentors that are working as part of a one-stop shop for mitigating energy poverty using the PowerPool approach. So initially, we have established the network of trained and certified energy supporters and mentors. Our training materials are available on our website, and we did it because a lot of it was through COVID. We did a lot of it online, but some of them on site also. And then our energy supporters and mentors took it upon themselves. So it really just takes one person to actually go volunteer and go into visiting people. So they took it upon themselves and they undertook home visits, helping people in their communities, in their neighbors, in their networks, leveraging our toolkit. You can find it here. And of course, we have also the Energy Poverty Guidebook for Energy Planning, where you can see our whole approach. It's in a simple language and it can be used by anyone. And then we also have the one-stop shops in the different countries. Here you can see where the in which municipalities or in which establishments or where these one-stop shops can be found. They usually they look like this a little bit. So it has these establishments either are part of the existing structures within a municipality, or they use it as part of the social services. So how it works is that the employee that already does work in this in social parts of the municipality or is already providing information also undertakes the training from the PARPA project, and they are able to provide all the support there is to be provided through the PARPA approach. And also we have the national partners have really advertised what is happening through local channels of information, for instance, a local newspaper or something that can be easily accessible to energy poor citizens. Yep. Oh, sorry. No, it's okay. I thought I skipped one, and also what really helped us to find citizens and bring forward the local heroes was spreading the word, and we have done so in any situation possible. Here you can see two examples from Croatia and Hungary, where we the national partners were part of fairs that were happening in the respective cities. The one I think is in Budapest and the other in Krzyzewicz. Sorry if I butchered that. So what we have done so far, so we have trained more than 1,200 people in about 37 training seminars, and more than 950 of them are certified energy supporters and mentors. We have 2,400 interactions in the tools. We're supporting 8,000 households in 52 municipalities. And now I think it's not 17, but it's 19 of them that have an energy poverty alleviation office. We have held a lot of info days with plenty of attendees, and we have presented the project in many events across Europe. And what is happening now, how we are proceeding, we have just rolled out our 8 national roadmaps and 1 EU-wide roadmap with policy recommendations deriving from the PARPA experience, and mainly these recommendations really bring forward the need of including people in the loop, including regular citizens and everyday people in the whole process of mitigating energy poverty. We are going to be establishing our PARPA Alliance, and we are partnering with Rete Assist, which is a network that is already available that was doing similar work in other countries. And we still have 2 EU inspiring events that are going to take place in the following months. So, yeah, that's it from my side.
Thanks a lot, Eleni. I think that's already quite impressive what you achieved in your project and what you developed. And what I take also from your 3 presentations is that we see things are growing. That's what you mentioned, Maya, about the your scheme in Austria. We also see that there are nice developments through the proper project, and definitely what EPA is doing is to support more and more local authorities to engage in these initiatives to tackle energy poverty. But what we hear also sometimes, and that's not specific to schemes for tackling energy poverty, but that's now something we hear a lot about the rollout of heat pumps or the building renovation, is that at some point there are some bottlenecks or some shortage. So that could be in materials, that could be in staff, or so maybe Maya, we can start with you. You say that you will get more funding, that you are happy to see that your youth scheme will grow. So are you ready to take that on? I mean, is your organization ready to deliver much more on short term, or do you see already some issues in training new staff or to getting more people with you?
Yeah, I think we'll definitely see how it goes during the next half year, because so far as I know, they're supposed to start in February. But as of now, everybody's very happy and very positive. We do have existing structures, so that is not the problem. I think the question will be how many people will actually require the service. Of course, there are certain calculations about that, and there have been new employees trained to be able to offer all the information that is needed. But as of now, I think in general, the situation is a little unclear of how prices especially will develop going forward, because there's sometimes this peculiar situation where people who are already under the poverty line, because they have received state funding before, because they're used to being in that support system, they are kind of already supported. Of course, they often need a little more, especially right now, but it's the people who are just above the poverty line. And we do see that, especially, during the COVID crisis as well. Like the last couple of years have brought a number of people to Caritas who have previously not really been our target audience, simply because the situation has changed for them and they were not able to pay their bills anymore. And so I think this will be the balance to be struck. The system is in place, so to speak. The question is, will it be enough to deal with the demand, which we cannot as of yet say for sure. But I think we're set up pretty well for that.
And maybe the other question with our two topics of today is who should be involved, and maybe for your case that's who you are working with, and maybe the special case in Austria is that there is also an energy efficiency obligation scheme, and in the previous period there was a kind of bonus for actions done among low-income households, but unless I'm mistaken, it did not work so well, let's say, so that it did not deliver so much. So are you working also with energy companies, and do you see, I know that the legal basis is not yet there for the new period in Austria, but do you have some information about how it could develop and how you could interact with energy companies through the obligation scheme?
Yes, I think during the last year, especially, there has been a lot of, I guess, demand also of the energy utilities to step up because, of course, of the price increase due to the gas price increase. A lot of them had raises in their income, basically, which were not necessarily due to any, further work that they were doing. And so there has been actually a lot of kind of like return of investment, so to speak. Caritas has been approached by a number of utilities who wanted to offer some of their profits to be basically given to poor households and to households in need. So there is a lot of social conscience in that regard in Austria, which is of course good. But it also requires a lot of management. And of course, Caritas, as basically the biggest player in that regard, because we are present in all of Austria, we are approached quite frequently. And so there's a lot of management that has to go along with that. But over the last years, there has been an increased, I'd say, presence of the topic in general. And so we are happy to have this kind of cooperation, because it's always easiest when utilities are aware that they might be able to detect customers who are struggling because they're not paying their bills. But you can also just forget to pay your bill one time. Like, that doesn't mean you're energy poor. And also just by seeing a household uses a certain number of electricity doesn't tell you anything, because the utilities only know who is paying the bill, but not how many people are living in that household specifically. And so that's where kind of the cooperation with NGOs is so important, because the last thing we want, especially right now, is for people to be cut off from electricity or have their contracts be cancelled. And so if utilities approach us directly and they're like, we have a couple people who are not paying their bills, can you take care of that, or can you help us take care of that? Because of course a utility is not able to provide the kind of social service that an NGO can, because that's not their job as well. And so if there is a willingness to cooperate, then I think everybody can provide what they're good at to the best of their ability, and people can be serviced to the best of everyone's ability. And that's really what is important. And especially if in projects such as mine, for example, there is the possibility to get in experts as well, who kind of walk along with the process and who monitor the process and who kind of use the data also to make sure that no knowledge is lost, because all the information that we have and all the data that we've collected, we've been using for advocacy work over the last couple of years. And it's led us to, I think, a lot of money now to support energy poor households, which is always the target, or like the biggest win, I'd say, because in the past, it has often been the case that depending on where you are, you only could access certain services. And so now we really have an Austria-wide scheme where everybody can access the same services, which is really amazing.
No, that's also a matter of fairness from a, let's say, a location point of view. That's clear, and that's interesting to hear you saying that you get cooperation with energy companies outside the obligation scheme. Actually, that they contact you also for consciousness, as you said, for other reasons. So that's interesting to hear that. Maybe coming back to you, João, and all the contacts and the support that you provide to local authorities, as you say, the inspiring cases that you identified. Do you see also local authorities working sometimes or rarely or often with energy companies, or are they more partnering with NGOs like Maria was saying just before?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we have these cases of European projects that partner with cities and so on. But looking to the bigger picture, I think we are still on a really, really early stage of local authorities understanding the problem. So we see, I would say, that if we make a review of what local authorities work on this, they are always the same, more or less. So what we have clearly understood is most of them are on a really early stage. So what they asked for us on the technical assistance, most of them was, I need to know what's energy poverty. I need to know exactly how I can understand that on my city. So we are on that level. Sometimes when we hear on these webinars, and so it seems like everything is kind of solved. We are just cherry picking specific topics, but no, it's still really, the situation is really bad. Then I also want to bring here something we need to do in all these sessions and the projects really working on the ground is clearly to demystify some ideas that we usually, and I say often, we hear. For example, it seems obvious the role of local governments. Everybody says that. The Commission says that. We say that. But then in practice, when we go to the ground, we see the problem. They don't have the staff. They don't have the knowledge. They don't have the capacity. So all these projects, the ones we are seeing today and all the others, it need to show exactly how this can be done in practice. And I can give you a couple of more examples. So the idea, the role of renewable energy communities. Also, we hear that it will solve the problem of energy poverty. Kind of, not exactly the full amount, but it seems obvious. It's not. What we see is the people who know about energy, the people who are engaged already on these activities that are going together and work on renewable energy communities, for example. Another thing I've been identifying also, not only on the EPA activities, but also with our projects at the university, it's the one-stop shops and the advice points. It's really difficult to engage them. And Eleni can talk about what they have happening on PowerPoint, because she says a big number, it's great, but I know specific examples which are not as good. And I have the same situation on a project. So how to really engage people, not only about settling an advice point or doing capacity building to citizens to support. Do energy poor people reach out to us? It's not obvious. It's not happening also. Then also something I've been seeing also, specifically on the Portuguese scheme, because I run this for the Portuguese government as well. It's called the Energy Efficiency Voucher. And what do we see? We see that people are not really knowing about the scheme. So I can tell you that under the Recovery and Resilience Plan, Portugal has set to give 100,000 energy efficiency vouchers. So free money for the people that can be suitable for that. We only got 17,000 submissions. So throughout 1 year and a half almost. It was free money. Why? What's happening, right? So it seemed, but that's not only problem. Then we have the amount is 1,300 euros plus VAT. Too small. What exactly people are doing? Clearly not deep energy renovations. Of course, it's better than 0 euros, right? But it's not solving anything. It's a minor support. Then, of course, we have bureaucracy, as all the other colleagues already mentioned as well. So the problem of materials, the cost, the knowledge of the companies. So companies are not knowledgeable, in fact, to do usually do insulation. What we have seen on the efficiency schemes in Portugal, not only the energy poverty or related one, but the broader scheme, is people go for the easy things. Heat pumps, fine, around 30%. The other 30% is solar PV, also fine. But we are not going for the renovation wave and the insulation of buildings idea. The other 30% are windows because they are easy to implement. So only around 2, 3, 4%, it's insulation of walls and roofs, which should be our key priority. I should be talking about the opposite. 98% was insulation and the rest was something else. So how exactly are we going to achieve the renovation wave and the targets we have on our renovation strategies in the countries if the current money, the big money, is going for other things, which are also, of course, relevant, but not exactly going deeper into the problem and to solve the problem? That's some thoughts about this as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good conclusion of your feedback, and that's definitely supports what SEI is doing in Ireland, I guess, and Claire would probably agree with what you just said. Maybe I will come back now to Eleni. We hear that there might be that's what Daniele said about social care staff. João, you also mentioned the possible shortage of staff or capacities in local authorities. So if I understood well, in Puerto you try to develop another approach where the citizens themselves would be engaged in developing the support to other households. So do you see that as an option to, let's say, to overcome this difficulty of having some of the organizations who should be involved that have not always the resources to do so?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, following up on what João said, it is super difficult to actually engage people. To be honest, in many of our countries, Portugal is one of them, we have the issue of how do you persuade people to undergo the home visit, for instance. You're giving them free advice, right? It's as we said, it's for free. You have to pay nothing. You just give out some information and they tell you what you can do to enhance your energy efficiency. No harm, no foul. But it is super hard to reach out to the ones that are actually energy poor, to the ones that are really needing it. And what we have seen to be a little bit successful is the energy poverty alleviation offices. So this whole notion of one-stop shops, as also the Commission is advertising them as a solution, could we think from the Powerboard's perspective be a solution, because but it needs to be someone and some structure that people trust. So it comes back to being something that you can trust. For instance, in Croatia, we had a good example. Our national partner there partnered up with the Red Cross. So the Red Cross already did some home visits and some work within the framework of something else, like assessing even something social. And the volunteers also trained for the energy poverty point of view, and they provided extra advice. And because it came from the Red Cross volunteer, it was well received, because the people understood that this person gains nothing. They just give me advice. It's okay. I can go for it. So we saw stuff like this that worked. And another example that worked, and I'm gonna conclude, is that younger people are usually more up to the task of being either volunteers or of either being like the local heroes. So for instance, we had in Cyprus, not in one of our pilot countries, but in a different country, we had a student that took it upon himself and visited all the houses in his village. So he visited about like 200 houses was the village, and he could do it because of the locality of it. They knew him. They knew him. He was an electrical engineer. He's a student. Let's help out the student. So it really depends on how it is. The local circumstances can affect a lot how successful each venture can be. That's our key point, I think.
No, thanks a lot, Eleni, and to come back on this key point of trust. I think that's also something that Daniele first mentioned when he presented his experience, and I assume that's also something very important in the scheme developed in Austria. And I guess also, Claire, that coming back to Alan, that's important for SCIE to get a good recognition and let's say a positive attitude from households.
Yeah, definitely. I know for for the fully funded upgrade scheme that's for homes and energy poverty, they put so much focus there in making sure that absolutely everyone involved, from the SCI staff in the call center who will be taking any kind of calls or queries from those people, to the people going outside to do surveys or to actually install works or to inspect it. Everyone is really conscious of who they're dealing with and just been extra sensitive, and I think it works really well. I've actually gone out on site to inspect some of the works after they've been done with the inspectors to see how they do it. And I've just been really impressed. You know, it's been a really positive experience for the homeowners. The checks that are done are just absolutely checking everything to make sure that the work that they have had done is genuinely perfect. And I think that also probably has a good impact because it means that the homeowner will have a good experience of the measures themselves, and they'll then be able to say, actually, that was worth it. And there is a bit of pain sometimes in getting the insulation, there's disruption there, but in the end, my home, they've come out and checked it, it's great, it's warm. So that can kind of encourage other people to go for it as well. So I think it is a really positive experience, and the waiting lists are actually growing. So I think SCI is now, we've got such demand, in part because it seems to be a successful program that's been running for years, even if it's gotten slightly rebranded. But also in part, you know, the energy crisis is pushing more people into energy poverty because, you know, more and more people can't afford their heating. And so that is driving more people towards the program as well. So I think now we need to put on our thinking caps and make sure we can get the turnaround times down on that. But yeah, there's always more ideas of how to make these things better, more efficient, quicker. But yeah, making sure that the homeowner is treated sensitively the whole way through it is absolutely central.
Thanks a lot, Claire. And in what you mentioned, I also take the point that you have been doing schemes for years, and so that you can build on that, and that also create the trust and also the networks with installers and so on. And that's also something you mentioned, Maya, about the importance of word of mouth. So maybe that's also one key to scale up, is that you need first a time where you develop everything, where you show that it works, that you can have, let's say, some good examples that you can advertise, and then let's say more or less naturally, it will grow. And also that will give, I assume, and that's what I hear in what you have presented, Maya, that not only you get trust from the households, but also from the funders, because if you get more funding, obviously it's because they believe that you are efficient in delivering and in reaching the right person. Maybe I would like to now, for the few minutes that remain, to open the floor for questions and comments from the audience. We have already one from my colleague Diana Susser, and she asked about citizen land renovations and what you think about that. If you see that as a good way to tackle energy poverty on the one hand, and on the other hand, what would be the key to motivate citizens to engage in this type of initiative? So maybe on that, I assume, Melanie, you can probably start, because that's quite connected to the topic of Power Pro, I assume.
Indeed, that's true. I don't know. I'm not sure how much time we have. That's why I'm a little bit, you know. But in any case, so yeah, bringing it back to bringing people in the loop, and how this is important from the Power's point of view, and in the countries that we're working, we have faced several issues, and I'm trying now from the top of my head to think of the ones that are. Yeah, for instance, let's say in Estonia, we have this thing that they're full of not housing associations, but it's kind of social housing, but not also. I'm not sure whether someone here is from Estonia or if you're familiar with what I'm saying, but they have this huge block of flats, and they are like a lot of people live there, and they kind of have a manager, and they have district heating, and they're not sure how much they're spending. So in any case, access to information, for instance, from that point of view, was super difficult. I'm not sure whether I'm getting out of scope here. Please correct me if I am. But from other experiences, what we also had in Spain and Portugal, for instance, our partners there are energy cooperatives. So their networks were already familiar with the concept of energy communities, and what is happening there, what is a cooperative, how they can what are the merits of going into one. But in other countries, it's so far behind that it was super hard. They were saying energy communities, and everybody was like, what is this? How can I benefit from this? Why would you bring this as a solution to me? It doesn't sound like a proper solution. So in any case, again, I'm going back to how local, the local circumstances can change anything, but that's really the point of it, that there cannot be a one solution fits all. That's how we saw it, but it needs a lot of customization in the needs of the region, even not even a country-wise, even city or region-wise, because in different countries there are vastly different characteristics and different regions. I hope it covers it a little bit. I'm sorry if I overstepped.
No, and I think your point on energy cooperatives was quite in the scope, and maybe I turn to Daniele on that. If that's something that you have already developed or think about developing, working with energy communities. I think Italy is quite active in this field with supporting the development of energy communities. So do you see that as, because that's a bit different from Estonia, but we know that in Italy you have a lot of condominiums that has also some other challenges. So is it something that you have looked at, or that you are considering to look at in the future?
We started thinking about the energy communities at first when we approached the project, but then we moved to another point of view, because you have to convince even the board of your company. I think our approach can work well if social care institution staff is well trained to start. As I said, because as we were mentioning before, trust is really important. We got not so many questionnaires filled by social care institution, not because they didn't work well, but even because mainly because households didn't want to provide any data. So we have there was COVID and pandemic, and we couldn't do any visit, and we asked for pictures of their white appliances to say, okay, I'm gonna replace them, but I want to see how they look like. And they say, what do you need picture of my house? Why do you need picture of my fridge? You want to see when I'm gonna eat? I don't want to see your picture for you what you eat, but just to know how old it is and how can we solve your consumptions. But then yeah, of course, citizens can be the way you kind of fight the energy poverty issue, but not only, because many people don't know actually how energy flows in their house. So we were listening to other panelists that people don't know how to properly use their energy. And for instance, there was this staff in social service who told me that this household had two fridges running in its house, only half full, and they say, okay, why don't you turn one off? And they were happy afterwards. And it was very basic advice, but really people don't know what is energy actually. So that's it's for us, it was important to raise awareness about energy, how to use it, how to read the bill actually, because people don't even know what is kilowatt hour, what is they just care about the money they have to pay, the invoice, but not how to reduce the invoice in the real manner. So it's an option. And energy communities can be a way to deliver to solve the issue, but that's not as João was saying before, insulation is the main topic, and no one cares. Not all people care about insulation. Energy community can be a good way to solve the problem, starting from the insulation, indeed. But delivered by people, even energy communities. We were talking to a company who does that for job, as their job, and they were saying we don't have trust by the residential stock managers or people living in the residential stocks, because they say, okay, I want to know first how much I'm gonna save. It's not so easy. So you have to get the trust from people first. That's a basic.
Yeah, to demonstrate.
Crucial. Yeah.
Can I comment two things here? Two quick things?
Sure.
One is this idea that immediately any type of renovation will create financial savings. So half of Europe is not on that situation. Half of Europe, I would say the southern part of Europe, it's an under consumption problem. So people are not consuming enough energy even. They are restricting their energy consumption. So this is a problem of the energy efficiency schemes in the southern part of Europe, I would say, the cross-cutting, because we see that that's not an advantage. They are not consuming 500 euros of energy to save that amount because they renovate their homes. So this is a critical piece that even policies and the reporting to the Commission needs to be thought. We are reporting savings based on the theoretical savings of the consumption of the energy performance certificates, and we all know that it's not the real consumption. Another one related to the question of Diana about the energy communities. That's what I was mentioning on my presentation. So one of the technical assistances we are doing here in Lisbon to the civil parish of Lumiar, we are connecting with the civil parish, so the presidents and different agents, citizens associations and so on, to promote this idea of a renewable energy community really focused on supporting the energy poor. And that said, it can go in two ways, and that's a difficult thing. One is supporting by giving free energy, which is easier to implement because under the scheme will be people that know about it. They have funding that's available to support the development of the renewable energy community. But that's not really integrating the most vulnerable consumers into the transition. Of course, it's supporting them, but we need to understand how really to engage them on the scheme itself, on designing, on implementing, and so on. And that's the difficult part we need to all to think about.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, João. And yeah, just you know that project because you're part of the advisory board as well. But about the point you raised on energy savings and how to assess them, how to calculate them, that's typically an issue that we are discussing in another project that's named StreamSaved, and I've put the link in the chat. We are a bit behind of time, so if you want to, I will give one last time the word to each of you, and you can give us, let's say, your key message or your concluding remark. Maybe in the sense of, imagine you are speaking to one stakeholder who would like to set up a new scheme, focusing on energy efficiency, if possible, to tackle energy poverty. What will be your first advice you would give them? And with that, on my side, I will conclude saying that for the ones who can, you can meet the SocialWatt team on 16th of March in Brussels. That will be our final conference. And I think it will also be a hybrid event. So in case you cannot go to Brussels, you can also join us online. So stay tuned and you will look at the SocialWatt website from time to time. You will soon get more information. So maybe we start in the same way as we've done for the speeches. So Daniel, if you want to give your concluding or your best advice.
Well, yeah. So first, to engage a new stakeholder, or actually to start this project in another place, I would say that the collaboration with social services is the key factor to solve this, to fight this problem, to face this problem, and to talk to the local government to find who can deliver this message. And help and apply for funds to get the money to start, and that's the very basic. And then with the numbers you can scale up and reach more people and reach more households and engage them, so you can show them how it works and how to improve and reach more people. Yeah, that's mainly it.
Thanks. I think that's all clear, and that summarizes very well what you said also in your first presentation. Claire?
Yeah, I think, I mean, for us in Ireland, we're working towards this new idea that it's better if we look at the long-term view. If we were to just keep on going where we're doing single measures, you get to more people, so you're helping more people faster, but you might be helping the people in such a way that they're still in energy poverty afterwards. And you could be helping people who actually are relatively warm relative to some of the people that you've missed. And you might have to come back to a lot of them again and again. So what we're trying to do here is test out to what extent can we just take a longer term view, start with the people who are in the greatest level of energy poverty and get them done, get the whole house absolutely up to scratch, and then move on to the next people. And hopefully that means that we're going to completely eliminate the number of people who are in a G-rated home and then an F-rated home and an E. It's not going to work exactly like that, but hopefully the approach that we're taking will help us to at least mean that the people who are still in energy poverty are in a lower level of energy poverty. But we'll have more information on how this goes as the years come in.
Yes, also looking forward to see what it gives. I think that's very, very interesting. Maria?
So I would definitely agree with pretty much all of that. Rely on existing structures, because you don't have to invent things new when they're already there. Definitely find cooperation partners that are viewed as neutral and or already have a good standing with the community that you're trying to help. And probably most important, long-term support. As Claire has already mentioned, a lot of households don't just have one problem, they have a multitude of them. They need long-term support. And even if you offer some support, you cannot expect these households to be able to pay 40, 50, 60% of anything out of pocket. So either you have full funding for something, and then you still need to offer them the support for all the administrative measures, so bureaucracy, but you cannot expect energy poor households to be able to pay for things, especially for renovation measures. That's just way beyond the scope of the kinds of households that we're talking about. So it has to be kind of a full package if it's supposed to get done in any kind of reasonable time frame, basically.
Thanks a lot, Maria. João?
I would say that one thing is really to reflect on this idea of the focus on passive measures. So of course we need all of the changes and improvements and the integration of solar and energy efficiency of the space heating equipment and so on. But this idea of focusing on the passive side of the buildings, also thinking of full buildings, not household level changes, because that's the problem with insulation, of course. And also, as Claire was also mentioning, this idea of integrated measures, not individual, single, to allow really for deep energy renovations to align to the European schemes and to the plans and the national policies as well. And also because this is a struggle, is testing schemes, because we have the problem of identification of vulnerable consumers and the energy poor at different perspectives, at different scales. So it's test and apply different schemes from different angles for different targeting. Maybe on this scheme A, I'm failing to reach out to specific people, but through scheme B, bottom up, different perspective with different stakeholders, we might able to get them. And really reflect on this idea of coverage versus leakage of energy efficiency schemes, because from the cases I know, we need to reflect and test. That's why we cannot say that this will work, because it's work in Ireland, let's apply it in Portugal. No, we need to test it, and maybe 6 months from now we need to tweak this a bit. It's about testing and to engage all the stakeholders that are relevant to support and to monitor and to communicate and disseminate all the schemes the existing schemes. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Joe. And I think what you just said is also supported by the experience of Claire and Maria, that okay, over time you fine-tune your programs to be more and more effective. And Eleni?
Yeah, totally agree with everything that has been said already. And to wrap it up from also the partner's point of view, so indeed rely on existing structures and maybe expanding their role. It has to be someone and something that people trust. Bringing forward local heroes is important, and combining that with maybe younger people, young people can be brought forward. Take into account, of course, the different local characteristics, and find out how to incorporate the energy poor in joint energy initiatives, because it's not really clear how this is happening at the moment. So that's pretty much it from my side.
Thanks a lot, Eleni. And maybe the last word for the coordinator of SocialWatt, Adriana, if you want to conclude the webinar. And before that, I just thank all the speakers and all the attendees for being here this morning. I think that was very, very interesting.
I couldn't agree more with everything that's been said. We need to move towards total full renovation packages and full renovation offerings. We need to look at the energy poor, as we said, with like being involved in schemes, but being able to do the works at no cost or at very low cost, so that they can be involved. And whether we're talking about existing structures or new structures, they need to kind of be inclusive. So basically offer all the support that energy poor needs, so that they can so that they can help them basically escape energy poverty. Thank you, everyone, as well, from my side, for this very interesting workshop and very interesting discussions.
Thanks a lot, Adriana. And so the recording and the presentation will be made available in a few days on the SocialWatt website. You had the link earlier in the chat, and you can already find the proceedings from the previous webinars. And yes, hopefully we will meet in March in Brussels, or we'll see you at least online. And with that, I wish you a very good remaining part of the day. Thanks a lot for joining, and have a good Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.